$4 to $8 million. I'm sorry, I made a miscalculation. $4 to $8 million in loss.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't do my math right. That's what I get for trying to math. Just give me a fat pencil and a tape measure, and I'm much better.
You're okay.
So it's a $4 to $8 million loss.
Okay, first document that I've got, I think Greg touched on it a little bit, is public health impacts of wind turbines prepared by the Minnesota Department of Health, Environment, Health Division. Just several key highlights from that is that the document does state that impacts noted by National Research Council of the National Academies that may have the most effect on health include noise and low frequency vibration and shadow flicker. The document does indicate that the noise produced by wind turbines is generally not a major concern beyond half a mile. Document also states that while the effects are induced by relatively intense stimulation, it's also true that A-weighted sound measurements are tuned to auditory sensitivity will underweight low frequencies for which the vestibular system is much more sensitive. This is the leading argument that A weighting in conjunction with C weighting should be utilized when addressing sound pressures related to wind turbines. You know, most of the information that we see relates only to the A measurement. Again, it states in here, the World Health Organization suggests that A weighting noise that has a large low frequency component is not reliable assessment of loudness related to noise that has a large low frequency component.
Well, and the other problem with the LEQ is that it's an equalized average over a period of time. If you go with an LA max, which goes and puts a maximum level, and like I had mentioned in the previous, their ad in the newspaper said it'll be never louder than never louder than a library, and acquired in a library, at its maximum level will never be higher. Then why do they want an LEQ of 45 instead of an LA max? Because a max says it'll never be higher, just like their ad in the newspaper says. The maximum level will never be higher than 45, even though Mr. Goldberg in his paperwork that we showed 2 weeks ago said that a quiet library or a library is 40 decibels. So you go with Peter Goldberg or you go with what they had like we discussed last time. I mean, even at 45, if it's an LEQ, that means it can go up to 55, 60 if it happens in high wind events, but because there's times when the turbines are shut down and never making a noise, they go and factor that in too. So when they factor that in, all of a sudden that offsets it and goes and sets it down to their technical terms of, oh, it'll never be higher than 45 decibels. Well, it will go higher than 45 because it's an equalizer. It's done on an average instead of a max. All right, interrupt.
That's okay. This document continues on the noise issue. It provides background information related to wind turbine noise. Mechanical noise from the wind turbine is sound that originates in the generator, gearbox, yaw motors, tower ventilation system, and transformer. Mechanical noise from the turbine or gearbox should only be heard above aerodynamic noise when they are not functioning properly. Aerodynamic noise is caused by wind passing over the blade of the wind turbine. The tip of a 40 to 50 meter blade travels at speeds over 140 miles per hour under normal operating conditions. And as the wind passes over the moving blade, the blade interrupts the laminar flow of air, causing turbulence and noise. Current blade designs minimize the amount of turbulence and noise caused by wind, but it's not possible to completely eliminate turbulence or noise. Aerodynamic noise from a wind turbine may be underestimated during planning. One source of error is that most meteorological wind speed measurements noted in wind farm literature are taken at 10 meters above the ground. Wind speed above this elevation in the area of wind turbine rotor is then calculated using established modeling relationships. In one study, which was Vandenberg of 2004, it was determined that wind speeds at the hub at night were up to 2.6 times higher than modeled. Subsequently, it was found that noise levels were 15 decibels higher than anticipated. Also, rhythmic modulation of noise, especially low frequency noise, has been found to be more annoying than steady noise. There's a study performed by Bradley in 1994, Homer in all in 1997. One form of rhythmic modulation of aerodynamic noise that can be noticeable very near to a wind turbine is called the distance to blade effect. Another source of rhythmic modulation may occur if the wind through the rotor is not uniform. That's if the wind at the higher sections of the blade is at a different speed or velocity than the wind speed at the bottom of the blade, in the circle. Anyhow, the blade angle or pitch is adjusted for different wind speeds to maximize power and minimize noise. And a blade angle that is not properly tuned for the wind speed will make more noise than a properly tuned blade. Horizontal layers with different wind speeds or directions can form in the atmosphere. This condition is called shear. If the winds at the top and the bottom of the blade are different, the blade noise will vary between the top and the bottom of the blade and the blade rotation, causing modulation of aerodynamic noise. In some terrains and under some atmospheric conditions, wind aloft near the top of the wind turbine can be moving faster than near the ground. I believe that's also a condition that happens at night when the atmosphere becomes more stable, is that the wind speed lower to the ground is typically at a lower speed than what it is still up in the atmosphere. So that promotes this condition. Let's see what else we have in here. Document talks about shadow flicker. Indicates that shadow flicker is rhythmic light flicker from the blades of a wind turbine casting intermittent shadows. Modeling conducted by the Minnesota Department of Health suggests that a receptor 300 meters perpendicular to and in the shadow of the blade on a wind turbine can be in the flicker shadow of the rotating blade for almost 1.5 hours a day. Document states that current wind turbine designs, flicker should not be an issue at distances over 10 rotational diameters, approximately 1,000 meters, or just in excess of half a mile, 0.6 tenths of a mile. This distance has been recommended by the Wind Energy Handbook as a minimum setback distance in directions that flicker may occur. Another concern on shadow flicker is that it may cause driver distraction if sighted too close to roadways.
That was out of Minnesota?
Yeah, this is out of Minnesota. On page 16 of the document states, noise complaints are usually a reasonable measure of annoyance with low-frequency environmental noise. Leventhal, from 2004, has reviewed noise complaints and offers the following conclusions. The problems arose in a quiet rural or suburban environment. The noise was often close to inaudibility and heard by a minority of people. The noise was typically inaudible, or the noise was typically audible indoors and not outdoors. The noise was more audible at night than day. The noise had a throb or rumble characteristic. The main complaints came from 55 to 70 years age group. The complainants had normal hearing and mental examination excluded tinnitus. Difference between acceptable and annoying noise is much less at low frequency. It means that you don't have the wide range of decibel differences, like from 45 to 55 decibel. But with low frequency, it's much closer than that. It could be, the difference could be between 35 and 40. That's what they're meaning on that. Low frequencies are not well attenuated or filtered out when they pass through walls and windows. Low frequencies travel farther than what the middle and higher frequencies do. And, part of the information that I've seen and heard is that there's a rule of thumb that you would, from an outside, if you're using a dBA weighted measurement from the outside of the facility, that modeling, without actually going in, they try to arbitrarily assume that there's a 15 decibel difference going from the outside to the interior.
Right, because they say they don't want to intrude on somebody's bedroom.
Right. So, but, you know, when you think about the discussions on low-frequency noise, is that difference might not hold true. We would have to research that more to find out. But, so that's what this point was. Higher frequencies can be efficiently attenuated by walls and windows. Document provides information and studies from various countries and concludes that lower decibel levels result in less complaints. I would think that would be, that's kind of obvious, I would think, but okay. Let's see. Page 20, there's a chart that demonstrates annoyance with wind turbines occurs at a lower sound levels than that of aircraft, road traffic, or railways. Sound impulsiveness, low frequency noise, and persistence of the noise, as well as demographic characteristics, may explain some of the difference. They looked, there's a group, looks like Kelbig and all, looked at the ability of different full spectrum rating schemes to predict annoyance caused by low frequency audio noise. They found that dBA is the worst predictor of annoyance at available scales. The World Health Organization recommends that if dBc is greater than 10 decibels, more than the dBA measurement, low frequency components of the noise may be important, should be evaluated separately. In addition, WHO says it should be noted that a large portion of low frequency components and noise may increase considerably the adverse effects on health. And on page 22, document states that WHO recommends 30 decibel aid measurement as a limit for a good night's sleep. However, they suggest the guidance for noise with predominating low frequency be less than 30 dBA. On page 24, the document states that Kemperman and James, 2008, modeled indoor noise from outdoor wind turbine noise measurements, assuming a typical vinyl-sided covered 2x4 wood frame construction. The wind turbine noise inside was calculated to be 5 decibel less than the noise outside. Model data suggested that the sound of a single 2.5 megawatt wind turbine at 1,000 feet will likely be heard in a house with the windows sealed, and that's at 1,000 feet. They noted that models used for siting turbines often incorporated structure attenuation of 15 decibel. So the Kepperman and James actually did studies on the exterior and the interior and only noted a 5 decibel difference as opposed to a 15 decibel difference that models estimate. Document conclusions. Walls and sealed windows attenuate higher frequencies, but their effect on low frequencies is limited. Minnesota nighttime standard of 50 dBA, not to exceed more than 50% of the time in a given hour, appears to underweight penetration of low frequency noise into dwellings. For some projects, wind velocity for a wind turbine project is measured at 10 meters and then modeled to the height of the rotor. These models may underpredict wind speed that will be encountered when the wind turbine is erected. Higher wind speed will result in noise exceeding model predictions as well. Low frequency noise from a wind turbine is generally not easily perceived beyond half a mile. However, if the wind turbine is subject to aerodynamic modulation because of shear caused by terrain or different wind conditions through the rotor plane, turbine noise may be heard at greater distances. Shadow flicker can affect individuals outdoor as well as indoor. Flicker can be eliminated by placement of wind turbines outside the path of the sun as viewed from areas of concern or by appropriate setbacks. Document recommendations. Wind turbine noise estimates should include cumulative impacts of all wind turbines. dBc measurement less dBA measurement greater than 10 decibels should also be determined to evaluate low frequency noise component, and potential impacts of shadow flicker and turbine visibility should be evaluated. But that's a study prepared by the Minnesota Department of Health for their state. Second document is a